It's a very sad.
Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome to Reading with Shilo. Yeah, welcome back to the next edition, the next session of Reading with Shilo. Give me just a second. I'm going to check my stream right quick. We are here, created to be his helpmeet by Ms. Debi Pearl. We are going to get into chapters 9 and chapter 10 today. Chapter 9 and chapter 10, since they're both short chapters. All right. Since y'all can hear me, feed is live. That's good. We can keep going. Man, Miss Debi Pearl has been hitting some stuff on the head in this book, man, with the created to be a helpmeet. It's a lot of things that I don't really think women think about when it comes time to marriage and their job as a helpmeet. But Miss Debi Pearl been busting them upside the head. So let's jump into it, man. I hope y'all ready. Welcome all the new subscribers. Welcome back to all the old subscribers. Man, like, comment, subscribe, share. Tell your people, man. Let them know about me. Let's keep growing the channel. Let's keep seeing if we could find things to learn and grow from the books that we read or the books that I read and you listen into. So chapter 9 is Finding Your Life in His. Finding Your Life in His. And chapter 10, Reactions Define You. So we're going to go through both. Chapter 9 of Created to Be His Helpmeet by Ms. Debi Pearl. Finding Your Life in His. From the beginning, God meant us to be a comfort, a blessing, a reward, a friend, an encouragement, and a right-hand woman. Memories that matter. I watched a movie one time called Dad. I told the story of an old couple in their final years. The wife treated her husband as inept, controlling him and always jumping to supply his every need with a patronizing, living in a hazy. The grown son came home to help the old parents in their last days. The old lady had spent her life controlling and taking care of her Mr. Nice, steady husband. But while the old woman was in the hospital with an ailment, the old man, at the encouragement of his middle-aged son, started going places and doing fun things. Suddenly, grandfather seemed years younger. It was like the calendar was turned back 50 years. He was happy now. When grandma got out of the hospital, she came home to a changed man. With great enthusiasm, he talked of friends and family that actually never existed. He spoke of the dairy farm and their life on it. She knew the woman he remembered so fondly was not she. He spoke of their 4 children, but they only had 2. He spoke with longing of his much loved, gentle, and obedient wife. Quite different from the reality he experienced over their many years together. His wife was terribly shaken, but she knew there never had been a dairy farm, nor were there more than 2 children. She knew that women had reminded she knew the woman he remembered so fondly was not her. Excuse me. A psychologist was called in to try to explain what was happening to the old man's mind. The doctor explained to the family that for 50 years, grandfather had worked faithfully at the same factory, doing the same job with his hands. But while his hands worked, his mind was dreaming of the life he really wanted. It was a life of sunshine and hard work on a dairy farm with his large family of children helping him. As grandfather's mind aged, the pleasant, make-believe world he had lived out in his imagination became more real to him than his caged life he was actually living in. Because of his wife's controlling hand and his desire to do his duty and please her, he had failed to live his dreams. She had weakened him with her control and criticism until he created an imaginary world of hope and fulfillment. This simple story illustrates so well the sad reality of many families. The CPA. This letter came from a lady whose husband decided to make his dreams come true. It would have taken a book of the size of this one to explain to her why she needs to be her husband's dream. I know this is what she really wants. I have been married for 19 years and my husband really is a great guy. He knows the Lord, but has not been as consistent with his Bible readings as I would like to see. I am not saying anything to him about it yet. Our problems really stem from a change he made for our family that started about 3 years ago. When we married, he was studying to be a CPA. I helped him through the last year of his schooling and spent 15 years with him going through long hours of tax seasons. I didn't like it much, but I knew that was his career. He wanted to find some job that would let him stay at home and be his own boss. I thought that was a noble cause, and I wanted him to be with our sons as they grew up. Well, what he has decided to do now, I can hardly handle. He decided to become a dairy farmer. We are city people. I told him all along, I really didn't have a desire to be a dairy farmer. For 3 years, all he has done is read and research on it. I know he can make it work. It is just not something I want to do. Keywords, I want to do. I have had to cope with a lot. He still works in town and rushes home to go work in the barn. I had to wait dinner on him last night until 7 p.m. And then he rushes home and goes straight to the barn. I was really hurt. I'm tired of working and feeling as though we are getting nowhere. This is tearing the family apart. I know I must be submissive, but I truly don't want to do this. I am not, it is not my dream. There was no talk of farming 19 years ago. Yolanda. Yolanda's concept of marriage is all wrong. Not at all like God's intention for marriage. God didn't create Adam and Eve at the same time and then tell them to work out some compromise on how they would each achieve their personal goals in a cooperative endeavor. He created Adam, gave him an occupation, appointed him as ruler of the planet, endowed him with spiritual outlook, gave him commands, and specified his occupational duties. Adam commenced his rule of the planet before God created Eve to help him in his life's goals. Adam didn't need to get Eve's consent. God gave her to Adam to be his helper, not his partner. God gave her to Adam to be his, not to be served, to assist, not to veto his decisions. Talk about a change of occupation and habitation. Look at Eve. Can you imagine her saying something like this to Adam? When God brought me to you in that wonderful garden and we commenced life together, you never said anything about thorns and thistles, about pain and childbirth, about milking goats and churning butter. I am not a wilderness girl. I wonder if Yolanda's husband will quit his dream come true because she drops frequent reminders that 19 years ago he didn't tell her that someday he was going to be a dairy farmer. Will her unhappy, overworked expressions break his joy and rob him of his vision? If he does go back to being a full-time CPA, I wonder if he will spend the rest of his life dreaming of a different kind of lady for a wife, a bunch of happy children, and a barn full of milk cows. Life is now. Don't make him ruin his life by being forced to count someone else's money. Find your life in his. God made us women to be helpmeets, and it is in our physical nature to be so. It is the role in which we will succeed in life, and it is where we will find our greatest fulfillment as a woman and as a saint of God. God said in Genesis, I will make him a helpmeet for him. Paul said, unto the woman, he said, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. When we fight God's will and our husbands, we are frustrated and disappointed. If our husbands are kind, steady men, like Yolanda's husband, They will eventually become discouraged and give up trying to please you. If our husbands are commandmen, they may leave us behind and find a dairy loving woman. If our husbands are visionaries, they will yell and make our lives miserable until we run back to mama and end up sleeping in a cold bed and living on food stamps. Life is full of choices. How you choose to respond will help you decide your fate in life. Life is now. Learn to really enjoy taking out the trash or milking a cow. You will be amazed at how God will fill you full of himself. You will look back in your happy old age and rejoice at your lot of life and wonder how you could have ever been a long-faced sad sack. Someday people will say to you, your personality is just a happy type, and that is why you enjoy life. Isn't that right? You can laugh and know that being in God's will is the only thing that makes you full of joy. God is not looking for a happy woman to make them into helpmeets for good men. He is looking for women willing to be true helpmeets to the men whom they marry, so he can fill them full of joy. His express image. We have studied three different types of men and how each one relates to the lady in his life. We have learned that God gives wisdom to those who ask. By now, you know that it will take supernatural wisdom for you to come to know, accept, and appreciate your man as God made him. He may be all the three different expressions at different times in his life, or he may be some of one and a lot of another. The important thing is for you to understand that he is what God made him and that you are to be his suitable helper. Knowing what expression God has made him to be will help you become a better helpmeet to the helper, to the man of your life. God says so clearly and emphatically that if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. James chapter 1, verse 5. Ask God to help you know and appreciate your man. Pray to God. Pray that God will give you the wisdom and grace to share your man's dreams so it will always be you that he dreams about. That was my bad. Time to consider. Wisdom is knowing what you bought when you married that man and learning to adapt to him as he is while enjoying the full value of your purchase. Unto the woman he said, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Make a new habit. It is God's will for your husband to adapt to you, or it is God's will for you to adapt to him. Is it God's will, for you, for your husband to adapt to you, or is it God's will for you to adapt to him? What habits in your life should you change to adapt to your husband's needs? Start today. Getting serious with God. The word wisdom appears 223 times in God's words. As you look up and read each time the word wisdom appears, God will do a work in you and give you wisdom as you seek it. The Bible teaches that the sister of wisdom is God's commandments, and the kinswoman to wisdom is understanding. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 4. Add to your dairy your favorite add to your dairy your favorite wisdom verses. I guess it's supposed to be daily. Add to your daily your favorite wisdom verses. Establish one time each day that you will be reminded to ask God for wisdom. For instance, I have resolved for myself that when I stop at a red light, I will remember to pray for my husband. At every meal, we pray for both safety and wisdom for ourselves and our children. Write down a certain hour or occasion that will remind you that to silently ask God for wisdom for yourself and for your husband. Here are a few of my favorite wisdom verses. So teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Psalms chapter 90, verse 12. To receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment is equity. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 3. So that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. Proverbs 2, verse 2. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. And that was chapter 9. Let's get to chapter 10. Reactions define you. Reactions define you. A wise woman does not dream of what could have been. She does not see herself as God's gift to men. Therefore, she is joyful and content in her present circumstances. By the time you're married, you already held certain basic convictions. You knew right from wrong. You did what you thought was right, and no one could persuade you differently. But now you find yourself and your convictions challenged by someone who may not share your established standards of the world and worldview. He may be more liberal than you, more permissive, or he may be stricter or more legalistic. The presence of children further complicates the situation. You want desperately, to do what is right for them, but you have submitted yourself under the authority of another. Life is not going to be the way you have planned, and you can't act or react the way you had wanted to. You find yourself pushed to the limits of your patience, and then you react in unsubmissive and selfish anger. Reactions are not permitted. Reactions are not premeditated actions springing from our best motives, carefully thought out, planned, and weighed. They are emotional responses breaking loose like wild boars when we feel hurt, cheated, used, or misunderstood. They are often retaliatory, sometimes condemning, confrontational, or adversarial, and eventually vengeful and punishing. Your reactions break you loose from your social inhibitions and manifest who you really are inside and what you really believe at your core level. We lose our carefully preserved front when we are pressed beyond calculated thinking. Then who we really are is made manifest. You can control your future reactions considerably by changing the way you think before you are pressed into a response. The way you think every day determines the way you feel, and it will determine how you will react to stressful situations. Researchers have determined that the average person thinks over 40,000 thoughts each day. The heart is filled with thoughts, and it is out of the reservoir of thoughts that the mouth speaks words of praise or bitterness. When the pressure is on and the dam of reservation breaks loose, you cannot control what you say because you will speak from the abundance of your heart, from the 40,000 thoughts you had that day and all the days before. A good man out of the good treasures of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaketh. Thank you for the like. Luke chapter 6, verse 45. If you, as a wife, are going to change the way you have been speaking, it is not the matter of willpower. It is a matter of thought power. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7. You must bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts. Matthew chapter 15, verse 9. As Paul says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5. You will be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Not by the strength of your will to hold your tongue. God tells you how to think about your role as a wife and a helpmeet. If you believe him, you will think differently. If I were you, or in the airport baggage pickup area waiting on my red suitcase, and I saw a young man snatch it and run, I would be very upset until I learned that my husband sent him in to get it for me. When my thinking changed, my feelings changed. The lady married to the accountant turned dairyman was sitting at home angry, because her husband was late. Say it again, sir. All right, good job. I'll be in there in a second. I'm almost done. When he finally arrived, he went directly to the barn to take care of his cows. She couldn't hold her tongue. She couldn't help the way she felt because she had spent the entire day, no, the entire week, month, last 3 years, thinking how miserable she was for the circumstances her husband had brought upon her. She felt it was her red suitcase that was stolen. He has no right. She thought over and over again. This is what we agreed to when we got married. Excuse me, man, I'm reading terrible. Can I do this, Daddy? No, sir. Can you please go get me a bottle of water, please? This is not what we agreed to when we got married. She repeated to herself many times a day. He should come in and eat the supper that is already cold from waiting, not go out and milk those cows. She repeated to herself during the last 3 hours when it was obvious that he was late. She was storing up in her heart an abundance of selfish thoughts. Her actions and reactions became enslaved to her misguided thoughts. Hey, thank you. Stop. Hey, come here. Hey, stop making your brother upset like that, all right? Next time, let him do it, all right? All right. Do you want some? You want some? Come get it. What can she do to change her thoughts? She can learn something she does not know. Not just from the book's advice, but from God's book, the Bible. She was not created to choose her husband's vocation, nor to choose his or her lifestyle. She was created by God to be her husband's helper. In her case, that meant becoming a country girl, a dairyman's helper. She doesn't have to like cows, but she was created to help the man who does like cows. Think how different it would be if, when he were 3 hours late, she thought about how blessed she was to have a good man coming home to her at 7 in the evening with a paycheck and to have love, security, a father for her children, a warm bed all night, and the promise of a bright future with more cows, better milking equipment, and hopefully a rise in milk prices. How thrilling life would be. How exciting and new every day would be. An adventure out in the country, not stagnating like the rest of the old fogies in town. Many a woman is sitting alone at 7 in the evening, afraid that her ex-husband might try to break in again. And she's wondering where she and the kids are going to move to next month when they are evicted from their duplex. And I just saw a statistic that said that women hold the highest evictions. She and many others would love to be in the lady's kitchen, waiting peacefully for her grassroots husband to come in late for supper. Only to go out and tend to the cows. When he did finally come through the door, his dinner would be warm and the smiles and hugs would be warmer, with promises of even warmer bed. You are what you think, and God tells you how to think. Think the truth. This is not the power of positive thinking. This is the power of the truth as God defines it. You are created to be your husband's helper, not his conscience, not his vocation director, and certainly not his critic. When you develop an adversarial relationship with your husband, you do so on the premise that you are right and he is wrong. You are also assuming that you have the duty to resist, confront, and challenge him. In thinking he is wrong and you are right, you declare yourself wiser than he, more spiritual, more discerning, more sacrificial, etc. All this adds up to the obvious conclusion that you have assumed the role of leadership, teacher, and judge. This is sinful and odious, and it displeases God greatly. No woman will ever have peace and joy until her mind is filled with goodwill toward her husband. No woman will ever have peace and joy until her mind is filled with goodwill towards her husband. And she is committed to becoming a good helpmeet for him. As much of your life a reaction to real or perceived wrongs? Are you truly as wise as you think? Take the wisdom test below. Wisdom test. Number 1, do you have enough fear of God to not question his word? Number two, do you sometimes feel God is punishing you by telling you to obey your husband? Number 3, would you give God excuses like, my husband is mean, or I am a strong personality and he is weak? Number 4, would you respond if God gave you directions on how to talk, when not to talk, or how to dress, or even wear your hair? Number 5, are you comfortable with dismissing the Bible's role for women, by saying we live in a different culture? Number 6, when God says to reverence, meaning stand in awe of your husband, do you think that is demanding too much? And number 7, will you say, if God says it or even suggests it, then that is what I will do? If you can say, not my will, but thine be done, then you can know that your prayer is based on the fear of God. It is the beginning of wisdom. Ask God to give you the beginning of wisdom by asking him to teach you to fear him. Time to consider. We have learned that our created nature is to be a helpmeet to our husbands. We have learned that a helpmeet is someone who helps her husband in any and all of his life's projects. We have learned that the joy of the Lord is our strength, and that a merry heart is a real asset in becoming a godly helpmeet. A smile keeps our man looking our way. Our desire is to become a jolly playmate to our husband and to be an heir with him of the grace of life. All of us have decided that we do not want to grow old and become crazy old. Religious fanatics who think that they are obeying God's will, disregarding his written word. We have learned that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and we shudder to think that we might have ended up being like some of the old reprobates who we know who dishonor their husbands. We have learned that wisdom is a gift that God promises to anyone who asks. Through wisdom, we have discovered that each of our husbands are made in the image of God, either as a command man, a visionary man, a steady man, or some mixture of the three with one dominant. We know that it is our job as a helpmeet to always be looking for ways to better meet our husband's needs and desires. Traits of a good helpmeet. She asks God for wisdom. She learns to understand and appreciate her man for who he is. She learns to be flexible. Getting serious with God. Now that you have thought more about your role as a helpmeet, it is time to go back and add to the list of things you could be doing that will free your husband to be the man God created him to be. And that was the end of chapter 10. That was the end of chapters 9 and chapter 10 of Created to Be His Helpmeet by Miss Debi Pearl. Chapter 10 was Reactions Define You, and chapter 9 was Finding Your Life in His. One more chapter and we'll be caught up with Facebook. One more chapter, we'll be caught up on chapter 12 so I can start reading back on both Facebook and YouTube once again. YouTube has had my primary attention up until now, since my new motor and router came into place. So I think we've been doing good for the past week or so. We've been doing pretty good. So let's keep at it. Let's keep moving forward. Let's keep pushing forward in the book. We're almost halfway there.
Yeah, halfway there.
Almost.
Almost.
Mm-hmm. But we're going to keep pushing.
Yeah, keep pushing.
And we'll keep reading and keep learning and see what we can learn and grow from.
It's real fun.
Mm-hmm. So, till next time, man. Hope that you enjoyed it. This was Reading with Shilo.
Reading with DJ.
Shilo out.
Shalom, DJ out.
Shalom, everybody.
Shalom, everybody.
Golly,
Oh,
that was a
and
bird.
be my man. Shalom.